Hello there, it's Reem here, and the Assault on Endor tournament is just wrapping up with the four finalists, I believe, going head to head. I think one match is already done. I just thought I would take 10-15 minutes here to go over my fleet that I brought there. It's the first time I got to do Endor or any major TTS tournament. Had a lot of fun. I made it into the Gold Leagues, which was my goal. Um, with some Gar. I just thought I'd go over the list here in case anybody was interested about it. And just my thoughts on the tournament, how it went for me, quick. So, the fleet I brought is Tarkin Peltas, or Flight of the Pelta, I think is what I call it. It features many Peltas, five of them, in fact, and most of them are exactly the same. So they're all the medical Pelta, all five of them, and they all feature proximity mines and auxiliary shield teams. So that's a total of 10 mines. The only one that's different is one of them, of course, is commanded by Admiral Tarkin with a chart officer. So I went with Tarkin as the admiral for this fleet because he adds a number of important things for this fleet. He offers tokens, of course, and dials that you can use on the flagship if needed. Mainly in all my games, he was used for tokens, specifically one or two nav tokens, an engineering if I didn't take two nav, and then four con fire. Uh, and the reason is that I guess we should show the objectives and also the squadron component. So for squads, I have Anakin Skywalker in the Delta, Axe Kickback, and an Aether Sprite. A nice little, very point efficient 74 point squad ball. The objectives are Station Assault, Abandoned Mining Facility, and Follow the Deposits. And Tarkin helped with these objectives because a lot of them, this fleet is designed to sit in a castle. So all these are sit back and let you come to me. So on turn one, every game it was engineering dials on all five Peltas to get auxiliary shield teams up, and use a nav token to drop down to speed 0. The only time that we didn't drop down to speed 0 on turn one is when we were fighting double onager lists, which happened 2 times, possibly 3 over the course of the tournament, but we'll get to that recap later. So for all the matches, through my pods and through Gold League, Station Assault was the chosen objective because I had a 14-point bid and always went second. Station Assault is kind of what I figured would be the choice. It is the only one that doesn't allow me to farm points every turn, but it's one of the few reds that this fleet could score points on rather effectively. Most of the other ones didn't work with the limited dice pool. It wasn't good for any of like the dice ones. This was just the best option, and also it allowed 2 stations to sit here and tank on, and just one more thing to shoot. Station slot was for all of them. So, like I said, every game besides Onagers, you drop down to speed 0 with a nav token. You do engineering to get your shields up to 3 on either side, and then you just wait and see what the enemy does. With the 10 mines, choosing Station Assault, with the 2 stations, they would always be right on the border of distance 5, generally in the center because my opponents had put asteroids in either corner. If they didn't, the stations would go off to one side. And in my object placement, since the stations come down last, I would generally always put the first asteroid dead center or slightly closer to my deployment edge, but center in the map. And the rest of the asteroids I'd use to kind of make like a concave area around my deployment zone, like a giant U. And then before fleets, I'd use the 10 mines to basically put mines on each of those obstacles and guard the flanks, which made for a very interesting setup for the first player to see how they're going to come into the station. Some players opted the dive straight in, so they would take 2 to 3 mines. I think there were one or two cases where flotillas got blown up, clearing the way to get in. Um, or some people, some of the downfalls in some games for me was Patriot Fist is really good about just coming around the edge of the U and just coming in basically ship's length from my deployment edge going vertical sideways into my fleet. And the Peltas can do a lot, but they're not good at handling a flank like that. Um, so I think just kind of go over the highlights quick of the tournament and why I brought this list as I did. I signed up for Assault on Endor shortly after Command Stack did an episode on how the tournament went at Gen Con. And they talked about a lot of Starhawks and not a lot of Onagers and the Farmhawks. And I play a lot of Gar, and I was trying to figure out how Gar could beat a Farmhawk. And the best way that I could come up with was to beat them in the bid and play my objectives. And even when I was doing that with other fleets, um, I didn't really like the odds of them going up against a Starhawk with. There was always some weak objective. I thought even here with Station Assault, if the Starhawk decides to come in, I guess I never got to fight a Starhawk to test the theory, but I'm like, if it decides to come straight in, maybe it eats 2 or 3 mines or clips a asteroid. Um, Regardless, it's going to end up with 5 peltas shooting at it, which may or may not bring it down. I guess never got to test it. So this was my answer to the Starhawks um, that I never ended up facing. And I didn't see a lot of weaknesses for it. I thought it might struggle to win big, but I knew it would definitely really have a hard time losing big. And just as a recap, I did end up losing all 4 of my games in Gold League, but I still ended up with 17 points. So I never really had a big um, loss. It's really hard to kill Peltas. Like 2 of those matches in Gold Leagues were double onagers, and killing a Pelta with the double onager is just kind of annoying, especially with auxiliary shield teams. I had a lot of the standard reds and blacks come in with Ramadi, and it was 2 accuracies and like 6 damage. I think came up 2 or 3 times, uh, and it's simply okay, brace, redirect. Or sorry, they'd lock brace, they'd rock evade. So it's just like redirect, take no damage. And then the second one comes through, and then they don't get the accuracies as much, and you can still brace and redirect. So there's a lot of times where I got shot with 2 peltas, or by 2 onagers on a pelta. And depending on how the accuracies lined up, I take like 1 hull damage, no hull damage, but I lose all my shields. And it's just not very point efficient, because even if they do kill it, if it's not Tarkin, it's like 56 points. And even in those games where I did fight the double onagers, I ended up killing one, because if you they might pick a pelta off with 2 of them, you can do one every turn, or turn and a half probably is more realistic. With a single onager, you can maybe kill one every 2 rounds. Really depends on how you roll, because I get the refresh defensive tokens and don't have to burn them out. And it's all that work for 56 points. I can basically afford to lose 2 peltas if I kill the onager. And I think that's a major reason why I didn't lose big on some of those games that I lost, is because I was still able to kill an onager. The squad ball for this was very potent. Anakin's very good at trading up. Axe and kickback survive. The Delta with axe and kickback is more durable than you would think and pushes a lot of damage out. Um, Especially with double stations, being able to jump on a station, uh, proved very effective for keeping the squads alive. And I don't think I ever really lost a squad battle at all during the tournament. Granted, most of the lists I ended up having fighting didn't um, have a big squad component, but those that had a large one, I was able to tie up and trade effectively with. And even if the enemy doesn't bring squads, Anakin's rolling a black against ships with adept. Axe and kickback have black, and then the Delta has a blue with adept. So it's generally like 2, if not 3 points of damage that come in at the end of the round or during the round, because all the peltas. Um, Turn 1 was the engineering, and you drop to 0. Turn 2 was always nav to get up to speed 1, because now you know where the enemy's going. And then that means by round 3 you can kind of figure out when, if they're going to engage with squads or not, um, on 3 or 4. In doing that, you can set up what peltas are going to be commanding squads, because each one's going to do 2. Um, and you can really, with the 5 activations, you can really delay the squad game. And if they don't have squads, you can really delay, wait for them to like come into you for you to then throw the squads in, so you'll be able to activate them the following turn. And for the ones that aren't squatting, you're gonna figure out which one they're probably gonna beat up on, and that's the one that you're gonna queue engineering up on. And then the other ones, you just throw concentrate fire on, because concentrate fire dice, if I can attest to anything after flying 5 of these, are pretty effective, especially with the tokens from Tarkin. Because you always shoot with the side arc if you got that in range first generally, and if you get icons on either face, you just let it be. You save the concentrate fire dial and token for the front arc. Um, and then if you see like a blank red, you concentrate fire in a blue because you're going to get something useful, and you use the token on the red. So it's a pretty consistent 1 to 2 damage out the side and like 3 to 4 out the front, with the extra dice and token. And when you have that happen 5 times to you, even if they're like obstructing each other, if they start piling up the peltas, you still get blues out the side. If stuff flanks around you, you got reds out the rear. They're just very prickly. Each one is doing packets of like 1 damage or 2 damage, and then like 2 to 3 damage. I was able to eat a couple of Separatist Providences that way, because you can just tell where they're going to come in to assault the stations, and you line 4 or 5 of the peltas up to have front arcs, and like 2 or 3 of them will have a side arc as well. And they're tanky Providences on other larges, but they will get whittled down. It really becomes a contest of can they kill peltas faster than you can kill their bigs, their largest. Um, so for the losses that I did have in gold, um, there's a double onagers. They each killed 1 station. Onagers are slightly different setup for station assault. Normally, I said you put them both next to each other in the center or off to a side. With double onagers, I put one off into either corner with obstacles down the middle of the board, and then you mine the middle of the board. And then basically you see what side they deploy on, and you get to choose if you want to fight them or not. Because if you don't want to fight them, you'll just deploy across from them, and there'll be a giant minefield in front of you, and they can kill this station for free. If you think that they're going to be able to kill this station and still wrap around and kill the other station in the other corner, then you're going to have to fight. In which case you deploy across from them, they're probably not going to kill the station off in the opposite corner. And with this minefield in the front, what you've done is you essentially make it a 3x3 board. Um, and with 5 peltas coming at you, you might pick off one or two. You can't really run to the left because you're going to run out of board space. You can run through me, which wasn't too effective because the peltas are kind of staggered lined, so I was able to stop movement because the onagers just couldn't find a spot to land. Or if you're going to run off to a side, you're going to run into all the obstacles and mines in the center. So it just really prevented the onagers from escaping. And I always got one kill on them, and I cleaned up any squads they had, and maybe a flotilla or two. So those were effective trades. I lost against Constantine fleet that was flown by Louis Saint Andre, I believe. That was the first time I ever seen Constantine, and I was doing my speed zero trick. I think I stayed at zero for rounds one and two because he had a Kuat or an ISD1 and an interdictor, and I knew it was going to be hard to kill the interdictor there, so I was just going to try and delay the game as much as possible. Um, and never facing Constantine, I had looked him up beforehand. I'm like, oh yeah, he can drop speed down to one. Whatever, no big problem. I don't need to worry about Constantine at all because my peltas are always going to be at speed one. So I kind of dismissed it. I didn't realize that he can also pull a nav token off. So the pelta had a nav token that he was going to use to go to speed one. Um, and at that point, my Tarkin Admiral was out of nav tokens to distribute, and he pulled the nav token off, dropped it to zero one turn, and then the next turn when he was in like medium range, he came in and shot the Pelta when it was still at zero because I didn't have a dial lined up for it to be nav, and he basically one shot it. If he hadn't done that, I would have had him like in a kill box of 2 Peltas, to a side, two in his front. But he managed to kill that so he could fly through. It was a pretty funny match. There's one Pelta who actually didn't move the entire game because speed turn 1 and 2, he was at 0. Turn 3, 4, 5, and 6, his interdictor had the G8 or something that can lower the movement by 1. And the Pelta was at speed 1 the entire game, so every time it was that Pelta's turn to activate, yeah, you drop it to 0. So he got that kill on the Pelta and was allowed to fly through. He cleaned up both stations, I want to say. Um, and that was the loss there. And then the other loss I had was against a separatist list. And that was just I managed to kill a Providence because it came straight in to dive the station while a Recusant flanked from the side. Turns out Peltas are very, very efficient with ramming the 5 hull for their point value. The Providence came in, it was a fully specced out, decked out Salvo Providence with Beast of Burden behind it. Um, and I had set up 3 Peltas to try and fight the Recusant that I knew that was going to flank, and I had 2 that were just going to stall the Providence. Um, and I knew the 2 weren't ever going to be able to kill that. But when he turned to come in and dive, he did a little bit of a wiggle, woggle, joggle. uh, and he ended up landing on an asteroid with his back left corner, just a little bit ahead of the station. And I had a Pelta on the station, so what would happen for the next that he landed on turn 3, and for the next couple rounds, he would shoot. He's first round he shot at my Pelta. I was obstructed. The Pelta's tanky. It did like no damage because I got to use brace, redirect, evade. And then he rammed the Pelta and fell back on the asteroid. And then it was my turn to go, and I went with the Pelta and I rammed his Providence and landed back on the station to heal. So we did that for 3 rounds, and I did 9 damage, or more than 9 damage because he was healing every turn. But I did 9 points of damage because he was pulling crits and stuff. That probably should have been a bigger loss for me, but The other advantage of Station Assault is not a lot of people play it, and the deployment's a bit different than the standard game, especially with all the mines. So I think it can throw some people off. But those were the four losses, generally speaking. I don't want to go into big details. Peltas are super efficient. Um, 14-point bid ensured second every turn. Um, I guess the one thing I should say, chart officers here, because I had a 13-point bid, and I think that's what um, the person who won Gen Con had a 13-point bid. So I was like, I have to go one lower to beat the Farm Hawks, because I think I had Adigalia, um, just to make this one a little bit more tankier. And I did Chart Officer because this Pelta is usually the last one placed with Tarkin, so it's going to be on an edge of the deployment. And I think just randomly before that, I had a game, just a casual game where some Jaina's late with an Ezra on it, like threw an asteroid in front of a Pelta, and then the Pelta just like died because it hit an asteroid for 2 rounds and got a couple of bad crits. So that was like fresh in my mind. So I'm like, we'll throw Chart Officer on. I don't think I ended up using it in the games. But other than that, I had a lot of fun with the Peltas. They're very point efficient. Great defensive tokens, great hull. Uh, Weak point is the flak, but it's whatever, and it's max speed. Had a great time with all my opponents. They're all really fun games. It was a fun tournament. Hope to do some more in the future. And if I do more tournaments in the future, if people want, I'll do a little recap about the fleet I brought, uh, and maybe the games in more detail if people are interested in that. But let me know if you have any thoughts on the fleet, the jankiness that made it in there into the Gold League of Salt on Endor. Otherwise, have a good one.